guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about my experience working as a remote medical coder. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue, I'm a medical coder. Okay guys, I'm gonna preface this video with this first. The stories that I'm talking about today are because I am an experienced medical coder and I was experienced before I became a remote medical coder. Okay, so I'm gonna put that out there first because a lot of times people are interested in becoming a medical coder, and namely a remote medical coder, because they want to do this from home. And what better way to earn money, and good money, working at home than to be a medical coder? And there's a lot of people that think that this is very easy, and it is not. It is far from easy. So I'm going to be talking about some of the things that I experienced when I was a remote medical coder, and let us begin. Okay, so that all out of the way. A few years ago, I worked remotely for a level 1 trauma hospital. Now, this company that I worked for, they had many contracts with many different hospitals, okay? But mainly we worked level 1 trauma hospitals. So it was a lot of injury coding, a lot of, just major procedures, multiple procedures, and it was very intense. I said when I started working for this company that, my supervisor, who is a great lady, Trish, the things that I was learning, and I had experience at the time. I had been a coder for a few years at this time, and so I was telling Trish, I was like, man, some of this charts that I'm getting are crazy. And then so she's like, yeah, we see a lot of really bad stuff in our queues, because I worked in a queue. So you'll see that sometimes when you're working as a medical coder, sometimes you are assigned a particular clinic, and that is your clinic, that is what you do, you take care of everything. And sometimes you're working out of a queue. Now, I do not like working out of a queue. A queue is when everything from everybody will go, all the providers that see patients that day, or do surgeries or whatever, it's all going to go into a central queue. And as you're going down this list, you are working on things that are not highlighted or touched, right? So basically, if it's touched or if it's highlighted, somebody else is in that record, so you go immediately to the next one. They say you can skip down a few just in case there's somebody else in there and you don't know, you don't hit a record simultaneously. That's how you start your workday. And so essentially you're just working from a pool of records, and you're just going and moving along. I don't like working in queues like that, because not everybody is a coder's coder. And there are a lot of coders who do not want to educate themselves. Sometimes they don't know. And sometimes they don't have that somebody to push them and tell them, hey, you need to learn. And it all starts with leadership. And so this company that I worked for, there was a few different leaders. My leader was a very strong leader. I really liked her. And when I started working there, right, they said, you can work any hours you wanted to. You didn't have to be on a schedule. And that was like, what? And I did find this job through the AHIMA job bank. So that was how I found it. And I was like, wow, you can work any hours you want to, like any hours of the day. You weren't on a set schedule. But it was for a level 1 trauma hospital. So I knew it was going to be a lot of traumas, and I knew it was going to be a lot of like same day surgeries and that kind of thing. And some, overnight surgeries and stuff. So, where they had to stay in the hospital and that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, well, I can handle that. So I applied for the job, and, literally the next day I was getting a call from Trish, and she was like, well, we got your resume. You have a really great resume. Can we send you a test? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And she goes, well, depending on how you do on this test, we'll call you and we'll go from there. So I said, okay. So I passed their test, and I was given a 50 question quiz in order to get into this. And it was just a mix of surgeries. It was a mix of, diagnosis questions and some like just basic anatomy questions and some book questions. So it was like, okay, can I navigate around? This is what I figured in this test. And so I did well. And so I got offered the job. So I was like, okay, it sounds great to me. And so Trish was like, well, you can work any hours you want to. You just have to make sure that all of your time is completed during the week. Like Sunday to Saturday, you have all that time, anytime. But you just have to make sure that you get everything done. You have to meet productivity. You have to meet accuracy. And I'm like, okay, sounds great to me. And so it's great, What I noticed, though, was this was my first time working in a queue situation, okay? Up until then, I had always worked where I was assigned to something, assigned to a clinic or assigned to a provider or whatever. And so I didn't have experience working in these queue situations. Well, I was working in the evenings, and that was the time that I was on, and I was on the weekends as well. And so as I'm going through these charts, I'm like, man, some of these are really hard. And it wasn't like, it was an easy one and then a hard one. These were all difficult charts. And I'm like, I was like, it's no wonder why there's so many perks to this job. They sent you a computer, and they did quarterly bonuses. It wasn't that they were doing, just year-end bonuses. These were quarterly bonuses that you got. If you met productivity, you met accuracy, you got quarterly bonuses. And I was like, wow, it's really good money. And, they send you a computer. They were always sending cards and little gifts in the mail. And I was like, wow, this is really nice. Like, you were appreciated. And that was what I really liked about this job, was that you were really appreciated, and they showed their appreciation. There's nothing better than when you are working a job and they appreciate you. I have been in many, many situations where I'm not like, there's nothing extra. You have a job. And I did have a boss one time say, you have a job? She didn't tell me this, but she said it to other people, that because they were asking about bonuses and how come people weren't getting bonuses, because people hadn't gotten bonuses for a couple of years. And she actually told them that you have a job, that is your bonus. Yeah, not the most pleasant of people. But that aside, this company was really great about recognizing their people. And I was like, wow, but I'm going through this, and I'm talking to Trish one day, and I'm like, Trish, I've noticed a lot of like really hard stuff. She goes, oh, well, you'll get those appendectomies here and there, and maybe colonoscopies. I said, no, I haven't seen any. She's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I've only been getting like, multiple traumas and things like that, really complex procedures. Not that I don't mind the challenge, because I love the challenge, but it's hurting my productivity. And so she starts looking at all of my records that I've been coding. She's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, this is what I've been doing, and I'm trying to keep up. I am. And I said, and I don't understand. She goes, no. There's people that are skipping. So we had this big meeting about people, not skipping. And all of a sudden I started seeing a little bit of easier stuff when I was on. And so I was like, okay, this can balance out. But I always did get the short end of the stick with those, complex procedures, which was fine, because the more that I spent time with them, the faster I got. And I would tell Trish, I said, Trish, working at this company is like the Marine Corps of medical coding, because if you can get through this, you can work anywhere. And that was my mentality, because I was getting so much training at this place. And this wasn't for easy stuff. This was complex stuff, like I said. So that's what I enjoyed. And it did make me a strong coder. And, I had spent time, with this company. I've been there for years. And it was a good thing that I was already established, like, with coding. Like, I already knew my way around coding, because I was on my own a lot. I didn't have a supervisor behind me watching me, which is another thing that I liked. I liked being independent. I liked not having somebody right in my ear. I can't do micromanaging. And I had come from a micromanager, right? In my work. And it's just like, no, I can't do micromanaging. Okay, I can't. I'm responsible enough to be able to do my work. But it is about problem solving, and being independent, working on your own and doing that kind of thing. And the fact that I didn't need somebody to hold my hand, as far as like, I don't know how to do this. I literally had to figure that stuff out. And that's why I say it's like the Marine Corps of medical coding with this company. And there was a lot of ways that they tried to make it very interactive, because we were all spread all over the US. And so during our meetings, we would, talk and things like that. And, people each had a chance to say something, and, if you had any announcements and that kind of thing. So they always tried to make it like a little bit of a connection. And they told us to leave we had a little chat box up. And I forget what chat thing we used. It wasn't Teams. Okay, this was before then. But we had this little chat box up. So if you were on, it said, leave your little green light on. So that way, if somebody needs to reach out to you, you have somebody to connect with. Well, me working in my little off hours, like off time when nobody else is there, right? So basically I'm working alone by myself, Anytime somebody would come in and they'd be like, oh, I'm working late myself. Hey, how you doing? And I'll be like, oh, hey, just humming along. And sometimes they would come on and ask me questions and be like, hey, have you seen something like this before? What would you do in this scenario? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this, and this, So that was a good way to make friends, when you're working remotely. And one time we had another way to keep us engaged together. Was the company was based in Oklahoma, or they had a base in Oklahoma, and they also had a base up in North Texas. So I was like, okay, and they said, well, we want to have as like a dinner at headquarters in North Texas. And they go, well, can you make it? I'm like, wow, really? Then I get to meet everybody? They were like, yeah, So anybody who was from the Oklahoma area or Texas, if you wanted to go, they were going to make it in the evening so that everybody could get there and, just kind of meet and have some food and, just have some fellowship. And, that was what we were going to do. So I was like, okay, that's awesome. So I went up to North Texas. And I got to meet everybody. I got to meet my boss, like face to face. A sweet lady, really awesome lady. And she would always say, I'm old. And then when I met her, she's like so young. And I'm like, really, Trish, come on, And so we met the company president. And the company president was a really awesome lady too. She actually was on the serving line for everybody. So that's what I like when I see that. For me, culturally, I'm Hispanic, right? People ask me all the time, what is your nationality? I'm Hispanic. I'm Spanish, and I'm Native American Indian. And so it is in my culture, right, that I when I hostess or whenever I'm, hosting something, that I always serve the people. And so that's what I do. And to me, that shows a sign of respect to your guest. And so this lady, she was like on the serving line, and she had a really pretty dress on, and she was doing part of the serving too. And that to me shows strong leadership. And I never really thought about leadership back then and how important these little details were until later on, before when I used to do potlucks all the time, or when I would bring food in, I always serve my providers. And anytime they come in and I brought something, I always just get up and I make them a plate. And a lot of my boys were not used to that in the beginning. They were like, what are you doing? And then they go, I can serve myself. I said, no, you're my guest. And that's the way I do things. And so it took them a minute to get used to it, but they like it. And to me, again, that shows a good, strong sign of leadership. So this lady was really cool, and we talked, and it was just a fun night, everybody just being together, and they said that was something that they wanted to continue to do. Well, I worked for this company, like I said, for a few years, and then that lady, the president of the company, she left, and everything went downhill. It went downhill fast, and all of a sudden my my relaxed atmosphere of work, working remotely at home, went away, and it was structured, and it got stressful, and it was not about like what you were doing as far as like you could be perfect on accuracy, you could be perfect on productivity, but they wanted more. And so it just got to be too much, and I ended up leaving because it's just like, no, this was not what I had signed up for. You changed the game around, and that I didn't like. And the more that I thought about it, you know, I had dealt with a lot of like changing in the queue and people still skipping, and I'm like, no, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And everything, the fun just got to be less and less, and Trish ended up leaving as well. And so then I had another supervisor, the other supervisor's nice lady, you know, but not Trish, you know. And so that was just like, after that, that was kind of like the last straw that I was like, I think it's time for me to move on. So that was when I closed the chapter on doing that. And I didn't work remotely after that for years. And it wasn't until the pandemic happened that I went back into working remote. You know, at my facility, everybody got sent home. And so we had to bring all of our equipment home, and we had to set up and do all of these things. But because I had been working at the facility so long, and I was used to the chaos and the noise and my providers and just being around them, and then all of a sudden I wasn't. And years before, when I had worked remotely, I was fine with the quiet, because I had gone from noisy women, right? Because we were in this tin can of a room with 20 noisy women, and their constant noise and chewing and perfume and every miserable thing you could imagine working in a room with 20 women. And then I was at home in peace, and I'm like, okay. And that's part of what I loved about working from home. But then, you know, you fast forward a few years, and you've been at the facility, you have your own office, and you are working around people and your peers. And to me, when I say my peers, it's not other coders, it was my providers. And so when I'm working around them, and I just had gotten so used to it, and then all of a sudden everybody's sent home, and we're in this pandemic, and, you know, it's just all this nuttiness of not knowing what was going to happen. And being at home for 5 miserable months was almost too much for me to bear. I did not enjoy working at home. It was completely different. And I know probably maybe it was the setting, you know, as far as like, I know my providers, I'm around them, I'm so used to them. And that was where I wanted to be. I wanted to be at the facility. I didn't want to be at home. And there was no joy in working at home. My last experience, you know, the pandemic, my internet was slow, and I mean, it's not my fault. My internet was slow, and I would get calls from my boss. Are you working? If I wasn't working, what would I be doing? And so it was that kind of thing where I'm like panicked because my internet is going slow, the systems won't let me log in, and then everything was freezing because all of a sudden all the systems were crashing because everybody was trying to log in at the same time. And rather than kind of stagger us, you know, during the day, or letting us, you know, move our schedules around, they didn't even want to let us work with that. So I did not like just getting up and just sitting at the computer, and I did not like as far as like just getting up, rolling out of bed, and then just being there. I had to get into a routine because it was so bad that I just was just like, I don't like not going someplace. And I had to get into that. I have to do makeup, and I have to do my hair, and I have to do, you know, everything. So like a routine, so that I could get into like the workspace in my head, because it just didn't work as far as like, oh, I don't have to put on a dress. I don't have to, you know, do anything. I could just be in shorts and a t-shirt and just be okay. And that wasn't working for me either. And even though we didn't have to have cameras on or anything like that, And even when I worked remotely before, I didn't have to have cameras on. It was still it just didn't feel like work time. And I just felt bored, and it was so quiet. And I had to turn the TV on just to have some kind of noise, something so that I could be able to concentrate. And it's not for everybody when you work from home, and that's what I felt. And I said, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, I'm loving it. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to fix my hair. I don't have to wear makeup. I had to, because to me, in my head, that was what I was so used to. And that was the only way I was able to function working, and was getting up, getting dressed, and going through the motions of actually getting ready for work, and then just actually sitting at the computer at home. And so when the internet situation just did not improve, I'm like, I got to go back. And that was the deal when we were in the pandemic, is if your internet is not working at home, you got to go back to the facility. And that's what I did. And I was fine. Having my own office helps too. But, everybody was like calling me. They were like, Blue, you need to come back, because everybody's back. So we need you to come back. This is not working for us. And so I said, don't worry, I'll be back. So I went back to work. But that was my experience working as a remote medical coder. So the first time it was really great. And I learned a lot from working at home. And I learned a lot about problem solving and just learning how to work with the queue, which I did not like. And my advice to you is, if when you're applying for jobs and you get an interview, ask them if you are assigned to a clinic or if you are working from a queue. If they're telling you you're going to work from a queue, I would not recommend it because you will see people skipping charts. There's no foolproof way to catch people skipping charts. They say, oh yes, we can run a report. And yeah, some people do get caught. But there are some people who are so slick that they figure out how to skip charts and go undetected. Just my advice. So, yeah. And you're relying on yourself. You are doing that majority of the time. Because if I had a question, I had to pick up the phone and call my friend Jessica, or I had to, try to Google the answer, because I didn't have anybody to lean on. And so it's what I've always done, kind of always had the independent way of finding the answers, but it's different when you're brand new. And I would have never thought of doing this when I was brand new, as far as being a level 1 trauma coder and being brand new and never having worked in the field before. I know somebody's probably going to comment, well, I'm a level 1 trauma coder and I was never, yeah, okay. But I'm saying for me, and I just wouldn't recommend it for a lot of people. There's people few and far in between that can do that, but not everybody can. And so like I said, I love what I do, and I want you guys to know that there are things that happen that you may not expect. When you're working at home, you have to be on top of your game, because that productivity and that accuracy really does come into play. At least that's my advice anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this story time and my experience of working as a remote medical coder. If you haven't had a chance to, I hope you hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if it helped you. And I will see y'all next time. Bye.